I've gotten a lot of questions from a lot of you actually about the concept of grief and how I deal with grief, particularly after having had a near-death experience that brought a lot of people to my channel, was having seen me kind of relay that story. By the way, check out my cool shirt. If you want one, there's a link down in the description. I think I've sold one of them so far, so I'm doing okay. I just wanted to talk about grief, what the definition of grief is for me personally, and what I think grief is, because I think it's important. I think it's really important that people wrap their head around why you experience grief. And it'll actually make you feel a lot better about the reality that you are experiencing grief. But let me start by saying I'm highly familiar with grief. It's a real thing for me. As a young kid, I was 13 years old when my father died in a single car accident. Came as quite a shock. Lost my mother 12 years ago. While holding her hand, I was present in the room when she took her last breath, literally holding her hand as she died. Uh, my my wife and I lost my wife had a fetal demise at 7 months. Might as well have been one of my other kids. It was awful, soul crushing. Um, I've lost a lot of people over the years, friends, family, loved ones, people with whom I was very close. And one thing that I really, really learned throughout all of that, and it actually has nothing to do with my near-death experience directly, other than maybe I feel a little bit better about where people are headed. But somebody once said the smartest thing that I've ever heard to me, and this happened after my wife had the fetal demise 16 years ago. That still hurts, still makes me sad. But I'd had dozens and dozens of people attempt to rationalize why. There must have been something wrong. You know, it just wasn't the time. God had another plan. Those things don't make people that are going through grief feel any better. It doesn't add anything to the equation, and in fact, all it does is make you sadder. Because you're just talking about it and you're actually making light of it. So the next time you're with somebody who's experiencing grief, if you could refrain from the "I know how you feel" and you know they're in a better place, if you could just not do that, you would actually be doing that person that's experiencing grief a big favor, because they don't want to hear that stuff. They really don't. They don't want you to rationalize why it happened. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter to them why it happened. What matters is that it happened. And it makes people really sad when it makes it worse when you got somebody rationalizing all of it. Well, something must have been wrong, or whatever that excuse is for why it happened. It doesn't change anything. It doesn't make them feel any better. And I think I relayed this on another video at one point, but I'm going to do it again here. And I'm going to tell you the only reaction, the only response that will help from a loved one, and the only response that will help for somebody that maybe doesn't know you well enough that you need to be providing kind of input on their grief so much anyway. But uh, when my wife had the fetal demise that she had, I was crushed, wrecked, absolutely destroyed. And they'd taken my wife in for a surgery, frankly, yeah, get rid of the remains of our child. And it was rough and it was hard. And while that was happening, my mom's house wasn't too far away. And I drove to the house. Our other two kids were inside, and my stepdad kind of stopped me at the door and said, "Whoa, you can't see the girls right now." We had two other daughters at the time. And I said, "Well, why not?" He says, "You're an open book, man. It's all over your face. You can't see them right now. They'll just feel it all." And I was, So he kind of shuffled them off into another room. And then, I went in to see my mom, who was on a chemo machine and on oxygen, and she was frail. She was on her way out of the world at the time. She was struggling. But she looked at me, took one look at my face, and she just got up out of bed, regardless of how hard it was for her. Got up, walked over to me, put her arms around me, and said two words. And it was the only two words I needed to hear at the time from my mom. She said, "Aw, honey." And she pulled me down into her bed and she hugged me and stroked my hair and let me cry like a baby for hours. That's what I needed. I didn't need somebody to tell me why it was okay or why it happened or that everything was going to be okay. All of those things I already kind of intellectually knew anyway. Didn't make it suck any less. What I needed was for somebody to love me. And I needed somebody to just be there for me and hug me and love me. That's all I wanted. That's all I needed. And I needed it more than anything else in the world at the time. And I didn't even know it at the time. So if you got a loved one who's going through it, that's what they need. One thing that I've said to many people over the years when they've relayed to me that they've had a traumatic, difficult, painful event in their life, such as somebody in their life dying, is and it's almost rehearsed at this point because I've said it so many times because I get a lot of people that actually, for whatever reason, come and tell me about these experiences. What I say is, there's only one thing that I can tell you right now, and one piece of advice that I can give you for what you're feeling right now. And that one piece of advice is feel what you're feeling. You earned it. Feel what you're feeling. But if you can't stop feeling how you're feeling right now for too long, get some help because you're going to need it. That's it. And if I'm close enough to somebody, I'm going to wrap my arms around them and I'm going to love them. And that's it. I'm not going to talk to them about it. I'm not going to rationalize it. I'm not going to try to explain anything. I'm just going to love them because that's what people need when they're going through grief. Because what grief is, in actuality, is the ultimate manifestation of love. You can't grieve for somebody if you didn't love them. And grief is realizing, I'm not going to see this person again. And it hurts. And it sucks. And it's painful. And you know what people need to do when they're going through that? They need to feel it. And the only way that you can help that person is to love them. And that's it. That's all there is to it. And eventually, you know, if that person's really going through it and they're really, really having a hard time with something and they can't get past it a year or two down the road, not past it, but they can't function as a result of whatever happened a year or two down the road, then they need to go get some actual psychological help. But there's nothing wrong with somebody being very upset when there's something really traumatic and painful that's just happened in their life. And there is nothing that you can say that's going to make them feel any better. So don't say anything. Just love them. That's all you can do. Dark video, but a meaningful one. It's important. It's important to treat people how they need to be treated at those most difficult moments. They need to be loved. That's all they need. They need to be loved. And if you're one of those people that likes to try to rationalize it to make somebody feel better, for the love of God, please stop. They don't want it. They don't need it. You're not helping them. I love you. I respect you. And if I have to, I will protect you. And that's regardless of anything about you other than whether or not you personally are an asshole. Hey, like my video and subscribe and turn on the notification bell, or don't. Whatever makes you happy. Love you all. Thanks for watching.